Hi, everyone. We are back with number three of the uncoachable personality type. And over the course of these videos, we are looking at the 5 red flags of people who are not coachable. And we're on number three. So today, number three is the draft pick. This is the client who didn't choose it. It was their spouse, it was HR, it was their boss. They have no investment or interest in wanting to be coached. And so here we go. The draft pick is it. What are red flags that we start with during this chemistry call or an early session? This is a tricky one.
I've had a couple. So the first thing that will show up if it's coming from a family member is the coach can ask the most insightful open-ended questions and invitational open-ended questions as they possibly can come up with, and the client will still grunt one-word answers. Uh-huh. Yeah. No. Been in those painful conversations. Um, if they're not willing to engage, there's nothing we can do. They're there because somebody else wanted it. Maybe the conversation is about that person's perception of what's going on. Maybe all three of us need to be in the room initially. Um,
And
on
let me
the
just ask you, in that moment, there's so many coaches now in leadership and going into companies. And I mean, you've been a leadership coach. You know, there are times when your boss is putting somebody in front of you that does not want to be there. They're doing it because their boss or the HR told them so. They really truly are the draft pick. How, how does this it's almost like there's got to be some kind of ownership from the client, but because there is lack of that ownership, they're not invested, they're not interested. And can you get them interested? Is it possible to change it?
maybe, maybe because let's take the idea that they don't want to be there, but the reason they're there is because of performance issues. They're not showing up, or they have a bad attitude. They don't play well with others, or maybe it's just a bump in the road. But for whatever reason, their employer, HR, their boss wants to bring in some help for them to kind of re-engage. That person, depending on what's going on in their head, might feel like you're just here to check a box before they give me the pink slip. And we certainly don't want that to be the perception, even though that's where they might be. So it might just be opening up, like being there with them. Like, I understand where you're coming from with that. I assure you that's not my role here. And what do you want? If you don't want that pink slip, how can we work together and come back to their interest? Or maybe they want to be out the door. Okay, so how do we move this a little bit faster if that's your goal? How can I best serve you to get to your goals here? Um, it's a tricky one when the client isn't there of their own accord. So we've got to come back to figure out how can we serve them and also still be under the umbrella of the interest of the sponsor.
Absolutely. And that leads me to this question, which is how do you spot when it's just time to maybe step away? How do you recognize when, you know what, this isn't a situation that really is coachable? It sounds like to me, you've just kind of suggested all these different explorations that could invite a draft picker into a engaged conversation. But what if that just isn't happening? What are the signs that say, hey, as a coach, it's time to step away from this situation?
If they are disengaged in the conversation initially, any one of them from the first one all the way through, if they're not showing up with any level of interest, and you'll feel it in the room, they're disinterested, could go far as checking their phone or being preoccupied. um, the other one is if they're not showing up in between doing their homework to make the changes, or things are getting worse rather than better. Those would be three big red flags. Or the boss is calling saying, this something's going on here. This situation is not getting better. So it could be the lens of the person who wants it to improve reaching out to say, what's happening over there, because the situation we brought you in to help with is not improving. So that could be a conversation as well. It's not on us. The person who is the goal to get changed is not happening.
Right, right. And it could be as simple as they're just not showing up to the sessions. They're
Yeah,
showing up
for whatever
late.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it could
I love
be,
that.
we think about a work situation, it could be this one's a gentler one. Maybe they just have something really intense going on at home, like death of a family, illness in the family, any kind of thing that's taken their bandwidth. And they're so caught up there for good reason that other than providing a paycheck to get through the next week or 2 weeks, work is just a side thought. And can we help to engage them in that to bring them back, or do they need to, is that something their boss needs to understand, because maybe they're not talking to them about what's really happening over here, and that would eventually come forward, and maybe we need to have a three-way meeting to put it all on the table, because we can't break the confidentiality of what happens in the session. And at the same time, if it's something that intense that's drawing them away from being present and effective at work, somewhere that has to come forward, or the situation's not going to get better for anybody involved.
There you have it. We just picked number 3, red flag, which is the draft pick. And you have a few different options on how to explore if they're going to be engaged or when to really walk away. We hope this video is really helpful, again, in spotting the draft picker.
All
We'll
right, we
see you
will
in the
see you in the
next
next
video.
one.